The event is back. Pulse 95 Live. At Expo Centre Sharjah.
Day one right here at the 6th edition of XPOSURE. This is the photography festival that is held every year at the Sharjah Expo Center, where we celebrate the world of photography. And today we're going to be interviewing our first ever world-class photographer. I'm joined here with my guest co-host, David Newton. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, starting off with our first ever guest, Elia Locardi is an internationally acclaimed professional travel photographer who has visited more than 65 countries worldwide, a writer who developed some of the most in-depth and complete landscape photography and post-processing tutorials available, and an experienced public speaker who has become one of the most followed photographers in the industry. Welcome, Elia.
Hey, it's good to be here.
It's good to, and this is not your first radio.
No, it's the first one today.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so.
I'm sure it's even, right now, the energy here is very lively. People are stepping in. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful this year. Expanded from last year. And for me, I just got in last night at like 2 a.m., so I haven't even hit the jet lag yet. I'm just sort of riding that. I have no idea where I am, what time it is kind of thing, so everything's amazing right now.
Just walk around, sipping the coffee, and enjoying the wonder.
Lots of coffee, yeah.
That's why we scheduled you for now. We thought we'd get you in before the jet lag hits. And,
oh, that's great.
Kind of ride that wave.
That's how we plan ahead. That's
Absolutely.
how we do it.
Yes, and looking at your portfolio, 65 countries, 2 million miles. Do you collect the air miles? That's the first question I want to ask.
Yeah, I have a lot. I'm a million miler with Delta.
Whoa.
I used to collect my boarding passes and bag tags. Now I have this big box of them, and
oh, that's amazing.
I kind of had to stop. It was getting out of control.
I'm sure airliners hate you. That's for sure.
No, they like me.
Oh, okay.
Are you kidding? Yeah, I keep them in business. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it does, like, the airline status is really nice, but yeah, then there's the jet lag. It definitely catches up with you.
And you seem like, but with so much travel experience, you seem the kind of person who would travel to the farthest corners of the earth just to capture something beautiful. 65 countries. What is a few more countries that are still on that list?
I'm actually really considering more of Central Asia that I haven't been visiting, and pre-pandemic that was a big part of the plan. Now I think in the future I really want to start visiting more of Bhutan in the north, and then Nepal and just some other places like there. I really want to get off the radar, so to speak. And that's kind of what I was working on before, the pandemic hit. But it's actually an interesting thing with that travel experience, and it's been 70 or 75 countries now. I repeat a lot of things. When I first started traveling, that was it. I'm from South Florida. I didn't see snow until I was 16 years old. We don't have it down there. And there's this little app. It's a map tunneling tool where you can kind of pick where you are, and you can kind of pop out on the other side. So I was like, what's the furthest place I can go? And I looked at all the flights and the details, and I started with Singapore. It was like my first thing, because I'm like, man, that is like 11,000 miles away. And that's exactly right. I was like, it's as far away as I can go. But as I started doing that, I realized that I can't just go and photograph a place and only stay a week or a few days. And I started to spend more time. Go back every year, different seasons, and meeting people and really experiencing and living in all those places that I visit.
Yeah, and in terms of whenever you go to these countries, do you feel that there's a part of you that stays there?
Yeah, you definitely. Well, we like to always leave a place better than when we arrived, but I think that at the time that the frequency of travel was so massive. It was also when social media really started taking effect in 2011, 12, 13, and onward, when Google Plus was there. Remember that? And we had Facebook, and then before Instagram. I mean, this was a really unique time because suddenly everybody was very connected. So when I was traveling, I was able to connect with people before I'd get there and build incredible community wherever I went. So it became kind of like going home. And then I went home to Australia and Sydney and Singapore and all these different places. So that sense of community and those friendships started to matter more than the photos I was taking.
Now, David, here, you're also a man of the world. You got yourself a truck. You do some road trips yourself?
I certainly do. I'm a few countries behind Elia, about 10 countries back, I think. I'm in the mid-60s at the minute.
I love the bragging rights.
Oh no, he way trumps me on bragging rights. Yes, I think travel is one of those things that expands the mind, doesn't it? And you did what I'm just starting out to. I've got a truck, but you were a digital nomad before the term was even coined.
Yeah, so we decided that was actually for 5 years, starting in 2012. We sold almost everything and became 100% location independent. And that there was no term. Then it was, I think, digital nomad was the thing, and location independent sounded good, and it was better than, saying, "Hey, Mom, we're going to be homeless." Location independent was like, "Oh, you have everything thought out. You're going to be fine." We're like, "Yeah, we have everything thought out. It's going to be fine." We had no idea. We just left, one-way ticket, and
Unknown territories.
Just 5 years on the road. It was really, really unique.
Which begs the question, for those who want to be the next digital nomad, take a camera, sell everything, and be on their way, what is that one advice that you'd warn them? Maybe something that it's like, hey, go on that adventure, but just be careful,
I think that the world we live in today, not just getting through the pandemic, has given more people the ability to work from home or work from any location. So I think moving forward now, it's easy to follow your dreams and not have to quit and leave everything. Just because we're more connected, companies are hiring major positions all over the world, no matter where you are. I think now's the time to do it. And I think that we've also gotten a sense of what's important to us, what's close to us, what home is. And certainly for me, the last few years have been very much about being a first-time father and somebody who owns a home again. These things have changed, but the next evolution of things is going to be that perfect balance, because we know what's important to us. We're able to take our work with us and do what we love.
Very fascinating. David, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Well, not to share, but to ask. And it's the question that I hate asking. Or no, it's the question I hate being asked, more correctly.
Sure.
You've been to a lot of countries. Favorites?
Yeah, that's hard, right?
It's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on landscape or food or just places I go to relax. I think that Italy's always going to be important to me because it's family heritage, and it was one of the first places I went to develop my style of photography and the blending and the colors and the architecture and the weather. I learned the bus system in Rome very early, which, when it comes, it's great, when the bus actually comes. But then spending time in the Himalayas and in Bhutan was very amazing for me. Just all of these places that were very remote, no internet, and just amazing people. And then landscapes. Iceland wasn't as popular as it is now, but there's just something amazing about it. And I think that there are places in the world that hold significance to certain people. But I feel like with landscapes, it really does get interesting when you start to get really far north or really far south, like Patagonia or Iceland. But it's hard to say. I have a tendency to like more places than I don't, and I have a tendency to kind of fall in love with places and plan to visit again. So that is in a constantly evolving list.
I think I'd agree. Usually my favorite place is probably the place I last went to.
That's right.
I have a connection to that place, and then you move on and you build a connection to the next place you go to, and that kind of usurps where you were before.
But isn't that important too, is to actually establish connection? And I think as an artist or photographer is trying to capture, whether it's cultures or people or nature, this is really important to form that connection with your subjects.
Absolutely. I think that's where the best pictures come from, isn't it? When you feel connected, when you've got some kind of feeling of comfort there, you start to understand a place, understand a people, you get better pictures. I actually want to ask you, though, something you brought up. You developed your style of photography and your blending, and how did that come about? What was the genesis? What was the drive for you to develop your style in that way?
My photography at first, man, I don't want to say 15 years ago, but it was very reverse engineered because I went to school and worked in computer graphics and CG and animation. So I learned Photoshop in 1999. I felt like I could do everything digitally, but I wanted to do everything traditionally. But when I started to work with the images, and back then, pre-2012, raw technology and the processing technology was very weak. So we had to shoot bracketed exposures and start blending these things together. HDR was a love-or-hate kind of situation, so I started doing everything manually, just putting what I needed in. If I needed the exposure here, and this was some masking, and I made it seamless. And then I started to realize, well, I can't always tell the story correctly. And I think I was standing in Venice, and I was like, when I first started traveling, and I thought, I'm going to go to Venice, and I'm going to take photos of the gondole, and everything's going to be beautiful. I didn't realize that everybody in there is like holding up their camera and wearing Hello Kitty T-shirts. It's just not as photographic when you're trying to capture the core essence of a place. So
Yeah.
I was like, man, well, I already got the shot. The light's perfect. Why don't I just wait a little while? And I started capturing different people and different things. And then I put it all together. And I'm like, there's something here. And then I started playing with light. So we'd shoot during the blue hour, which is before it's full dark. And then, put a sky from 10 minutes earlier in and blend it in a way where it doesn't break reality, but it kind of shows the totality of something, more the way that we'd remember it. Not just a still image, but a sequence of events. Try to encapsulate that love for a place, the familiarity, but also that emotional wow that we get when we stand and see something for the first time. That's what I'm trying to grab in that.
And in terms of your ever-evolving skills, we know that you are training. You are a trainer for an upcoming workshop, Introduction to Time Blending. Just give us a little bit of brief to those who are hoping to learn something here when they get to the exposure.
Well, it's a common misunderstanding that post-processing is difficult. And honestly, if you go on YouTube and you type, how do I make my photos better, the results are going to be mixed. You might get a little confused. But I think what we're all trying to push first in our work is that sense of wow, or whether it's just contrast, or something that makes people stop for a second, whether that's on their social media feed or in a gallery like this. We're really trying to grab attention so we can bring them into the story, hopefully get an emotional response. And sometimes that has to do with the blending of light and the mixing of light. So from start to finish, I'll start with the foundations of the raw, how to edit it, how to get the most out of it, the contrast. And then very quickly, we'll be doing things that seem complex, but are actually quite simple to blend time together.
All right. Introduction to Time Blending Techniques. You can find this on the Exposure Workshop tab. Be sure, if you're interested, it will be happening tomorrow from 1 all the way till 3:30. A very intensive course, especially if you're looking to master time-lapse. Definitely check it out. It's going to be hosted by Elia Licardi. Elia, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Wonderful insight into your mind, and definitely want to wish you all the best in future endeavors. And I want you to have a great time here at the Exposure event.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Awesome. To all our listeners, we're going to take a bit of a short break, and coming up next, we have yet another guest. This is Chris Coe. Can't wait to jump into that, right, David?
Absolutely.
All right. Right here on Pulse 95 Radio.